Good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing? Let me get rid of that. Oh no. What have I done? I've pressed buttons and buttons have gone wrong. Right. Today, we are having a look at all of the cards from the new set, Murders at Karlov Manor, for Magic. Which comes out, the pre-release is this Friday, so it will come out on to MTG Arena probably sometime next week. I haven't had a look at any of these cards yet, apart from the ones I saw, like this one, while I was, sorting out the slideshow so I could stream it to everybody. So fingers crossed it all goes well, and fingers crossed there are some cool things. Looking at this new, this is the only card I've seen. So looking at this, I'm assuming. Let's get started and we'll work through it as we go. Anyway, so this is the first card that I had, Case of the Shattered Pact. So I'm assuming this is one of the new mechanics, is a case. It looks very similar to a saga, so I'm assuming it plays very similar to the saga. So when you cast it for 2, you get the first effect. When this case enters the battlefield, okay, so when it enters the battlefield, you get the first effect. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. 2 mana ramp is just good. 2 mana ramp of any colour is very good. Although it's putting it into your hand, so it's not actually putting it onto the battlefield, so it's not necessarily ramp. So, To solve, there are 5 colours among permanents you control. If unsolved, solve at the beginning of your end step. So I guess it just sits on here until you solve it. You get the first effect. It does nothing until you have 5 colours among permanents you control, and then once it's solved, at the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gains flying, double strike, and vigilance until the end of turn. Is that permanently? So it just sits on the solved part, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, a creature gets flying, double strike, and vigilance. This is interesting. I think the problem is in limited. There's just no way. You have to play a 5-color deck in limited to make this thing flip. There's just no way you're doing this in limited, right? Unless you get if there's a 5-color absolute bomb and you pick it first and build for it the entire time and take a multiple of these, maybe. But I just don't see it happening in limited. And I don't really play standard, but also this seems too slow for standard. Well, maybe not. Play it on turn 2 if you're already playing 5 colours because you're playing one of those what are they called? The I can't remember what the effect is, but it reduces the cost of the enchantment or increases the number of 3/3s you get for each different colour of land you've got, whatever. So you're essentially playing 5 colour anyway. I mean, maybe it's playable. And giving a creature flying, double strike, and vigilance at the beginning of combat every turn is very strong. I could see this maybe being okay. I don't know. It depends. I don't think in limited it's playable, and I think in standard I don't think it goes into. Maybe it goes into that current standard deck of the 5-color one, maybe. But I don't know. I'm going to look at it from a limited perspective. And I'm going to say you don't pick this card in limited unless you're specifically playing 5 colours. And I don't think this is a card that puts you into 5 colours. I think this is just a card if you're already in 5 colours. But these cases seem a bit weird. I'll have to see if there are other cases. Maybe there's one for each colour and this is the colourless one. I don't know. What is this? Absolving Lamassu? Absolving Lamassu. Sure. 5 for a 4/3 flyer. Not bad. When it enters the battlefield, all suspected creatures are no longer suspected. A suspected creature has menace and can't block. Okay. When Absol Lama dies, you gain 3 life and suspect up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. So, being suspected makes you harder to block, but you can't block. Right. Okay. I think that's better for aggressive decks. I think in aggressive decks you want to suspect your own creatures, right? And then just hit people. This card's not bad. 5 mana for a 4/3 flyer. And when it dies, you gain 3 life and either make it so one of your opponent's creatures can't block. Oh yeah, it has to be an opponent's creature. Okay, so yeah, you make it so an opponent's creature can't block. I don't mind this card at all. I think this is fine. This is probably decent. I don't know how impactful all suspected creatures are no longer suspected is. I don't know how much of this suspected mechanic I'm going to be seeing. But I think on the base of it, a 5 mana 4/3 flyer that when it dies gains you 3 life and makes it so one of your opponent's creatures can't block is fine. I don't like the fact that your opponent's creature would have menace. It means you're probably going to get hit in the face with it. But I mean, it's a target creature and you get to pick the creature, so you just pick a 1/1. And then you don't care if they're hitting you with a 1/1 every turn, right? And it means the 1/1 can't block, which means they have to block with their bigger creatures. I think this card's pretty good, actually. I like this. I think I'd pick this. I think this is definitely, like, a decent card. Assemble the Players. Ooh, our first rare. 2 mana for an enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. Okay. Once each turn, you may cast a creature spell with power 2 or less from the top of your library. This is probably really good. I don't know about Limited. Limited, you're probably not running, like, super aggro, you know, everything in my deck is 2 or less. But I'm pretty sure in Standard you can probably make this work with, like, white blue humans aggro soldier deck thing. I think they top out at 3, if I remember correctly. I can't remember them having much more than 3 CMC. Oh, it's for power, not even CMC. Yeah. So almost everything in that deck starts at power 2 and then gets buffed on the board, right? This is going to be really good. Really good for that sort of deck. I mean, you do have to take creatures out for it, which is a bit of a pain in the ass. But it's not bad. Well, I don't know. I don't think in Limited it's that good. But I think in Standard it could be good. I'm going to... You know what? I'm going to leave my Standard evaluation. I'm just going to say in Limited I don't think it's good. Because I don't think you're running... Well... Maybe it's not bad. But I don't think it's great. Because I don't think you're running that many 2 power or less creatures. Unless that's the whole mechanic for white this set. And I don't know. But I'm going to say... I'm going to give it a good sort of... Aurelia's Vindicator. Okay. This is a mythic rare. 4 mana for a 4/2... Flying, lifelink, ward 2, disguise. 1 sec. What's disguise? Allows the play. Okay. It allows. So. Okay. So I'm having to look it up because this one doesn't explain the disguise, and like I said, I haven't had a look at any of these mechanics. Allows the player to pay 3 colorless to cast a card with the ability face down as a 2/2 colorless. So it's Morph. An upgraded variant of Morph, yeah. Colorless creature with the ward 2. Okay, so we can play this for 3 mana as a 2/2 face down creature. Can you do war? Can you flip it up at any time? Turn it face up at any time for its disguise cost. Okay. So its disguise cost is 4 and then X, and when it's turned face up, exile up to X other target creatures from the battlefield and/or creatures cards from graveyards. And then when it leaves the battlefield, you returned the exiled card to their owner's hand. This is too slow. Just so everyone's aware, this is too slow. In Limited, I mean, I think in Limited, it's a 4 mana, 4/2 flyer with lifelink, right? You just... Sure. You take it in limited. I don't know what I think about this whole disguise mechanic. I mean, I guess if your opponent is out of stuff, you play it one turn as a 2/2, and then the next turn you dump your entire mana pool to return all your creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, or exile all the creature cards from your graveyard, and then your opponent has to kill it because it's a 4/2 flying lifelinker. And when they do, you just return all the creatures, creatures from your graveyard to your hand, and just get a full reload. It's pretty good in limited. Like, also, it's just a 4/2 flying lifelinker. Like, for 4 mana, you just play this, and your opponent either deals with it, or you start chunking them for 4 and healing. It's got Ward 2 as well, so it's not easy to remove. You essentially need 2 or 3 mana removal realistically for the 4 mana. Because, like, what is it? The Hulking Raptor from the last set, the 5/3 that has Ward 2 that generates extra mana. The only way you remove that if it comes down on turn 4 is with 2-cost removal. So, I mean, there is a lot of 2-cost removal currently. There's the enchantment, ossify, ossification, or whatever. There's 100 different types of lightning bolt. There's, you know, all the black 2 mana removal. So there is certainly ways to get rid of it, but, you know, it's more likely to stick. I don't know about the disguise mechanic, but I think in limited, I think you could just play this as a 4/2 flying lifelinker for 4, and make with Ward 2, and make your opponent deal with it. And I don't think you're too upset about it, because even if you only get 1 swing in, you gain 4, they lose 4. That's an 8 health swing. Yeah, I think this is good in limited. It has to be, right? It's just a 4/2 flying lifelinker for 4. Like, it just is. But there's no other way to look at it. I don't know about the disguise. Like I said, if you're both you and your opponent are in top deck mode and you get this and you just disguise it, and then the next you just play it face down for 3, and then the next turn you just dump your entire mana pool into just flipping it up to return all your creatures from your graveyard, or exile all the creatures from your graveyard, and then your opponent kills it, you just get everything back, and then you have massive advantage. Oh, yeah. I think this is good and limited. That's all I'm going to say. I don't know if it's very good, because I mean it's only got 2 on the defense, so like 2/2 flyers trade with it. I don't know how expensive a 2/2 flyer is going to be, but in the previous set you could get a 2/2 flyer that had upside with a battle cry for 3. So if your opponent just has a 2/2 flyer that's already done what they wanted it to do for the battle cry for 3, and then you play this on 4, your opponent's just like, oh sweet, I'll just block. So like, it's not nuts, but I mean it is a it does mean your opponent has to block it really with anything that has flying, and it probably kills anything that has flying too. So it's pretty good. Auspicious Arrival, 2 mana, target creatures +2/+2 until end of turn. Investigate. I don't know what clue tokens are. Fantastic. It's a pump spell. 2 mana for +2/+2, and you get a clue token. The clue token does let you draw, so there's technically like, but it's 4. It is an extra 2 mana to draw. I don't think I like this too much. I think this is a bit slow and clunky. Doesn't give any sort of protection or evasion or anything. It's just +2. Maybe it's fine. It's something you're gonna have to play around in limited, because there'll always be that guy who's just running like 8 of these, because they'll just get passed around and around the table forever because nobody wants to take it. But it's fine. Call a Surprise Witness. 2 mana, sorcery. Return target creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a flying counter on it. It's a spirit in addition to its other types. Huh. That's good. Depending on what you're hitting, you can make any CMC 3 or less creature from your graveyard into a flyer. That could be really good. Yeah, I think I play this. Turn any creature I want into a flyer. And like, especially if there's some like heavy hitters. Like, because this could be like a 3-1 or a 4-2 or something like that. Like the last one, the 4-2 flying lifelink or all that. Like, if you just have a 4-2 ground creature, throw it at your opponent blocks and eats it, and then you just turn it into a flyer, your opponent needs to come up with a flying blocker now. And this is for 2. Yeah, I think I like this. It will depend very much if there's some stupidly overstatted, like, cheap white creature that you could just return this with, but I think this is good. I mean, the thing is, I've been a couple of these cards, and they haven't been fantastic. Like, the last one was 1 mana, in the previous set was 1 mana to return something with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, but it came in tapped, and it was just by itself. So, this, when it comes in, it's 1 more, but it comes in with a flying counter on it, which means it's much more of a problem in limited because it's got evasion. I think this is good. So let's move on. Case File Auditor. Okay, 3 mana for a 1/4 defensive. When Case File Auditor enters the battlefield, and whenever you solve a case, okay, so there's got to be a bunch of cases. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal an enchantment card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may spend mana as though a mana of any color to cast case spells. We haven't seen what the other case spells are, so I don't know if this is really good. I mean, if we're playing 5-color case deck, this is probably good, because all the cases are enchantments, right? The first one was, at least. I'm going to assume they all are. They're all like sagas. It allows you to spend mana of any color. I mean, again, it depends. It depends if there's like a big 5-color bomb win condition, or if the cases can win games by themselves. The first case was good if you have a creature, but like a decent creature. Like, if you have the first case, let's say you're playing the first case and this, which are the 2 case cards we've seen so far. Even if you flip the first case, you can make a 1/4 flying double strike vigilance. Cool. That's slightly better than having a 1/4 flying vigilance. Like, and slightly better than having a 1/4 vigilance. Like, it's not very impressive. So I don't know until I know what all the other case cards are. So I'm going to give this one like a case out of 10. Because I don't know if the case cards are going to be any good or not. Sorry, I need a drink. Ugh. So yeah, not sure about this one. We'll have to see. Speaking of cases, case of the Gateway Express. Okay, 2 mana. When it enters the battlefield, target creature you choose target creature you don't control. Each creature you control deals 1 damage to that creature. Okay. Like weenie removal. That's fine. To solve, 3 or more creatures attacked this turn. Again, weenie solves, that's fine. Solved. Creatures you control get +1 attack. This is good. I think this is good. It's removal on the top half. The middle is aggressive, and if you're playing white, I'm assuming you're probably trying to be aggressive. And then the next one, the solved case, is just extra, a boost of damage for your creatures. I think this is good. I think I pick this up if I'm playing white. Because, like, say you've got 3 creatures on the field because you're playing white weenies, and you play this, it's just, 3 damage to a creature. And then you attack with all 3 of those creatures on that turn, flip this, or solve this. I suppose it doesn't do anything the turn it's... So you essentially... you can use it as removal, then attack with 3 creatures, and then the turn after, because it solves at the beginning of your end step, from what I can tell, your creatures all get pumped. But I think that's fine. I think that the whole it's removal on the top half, yeah, I think this is really good. This has to be really good, right? It's removal with upside. The removal's not great because it requires you to have a bunch of creatures, but in limited you get stored board states all the time. This has to be good. I don't even know why I'm considering it. This has to be good. This is remove a creature. If you swing with your creatures, which you want to be doing anyway, everything gets bigger. This is good. This has to be good. We're not even going to discuss it anymore. This is a good card. It has to be. Case of the Pilfered Proof. Okay. So is white the case color? I guess. I don't know. So for 2 mana, when a detective enters the battlefield under your control, and whenever a detective you control is turned face up, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Okay. To solve, you control 3 or more detectives. Sure. Solved. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a clue token are created instead. So, this guy was a detective, right? Yeah. But he's the only detective we've... Sorry, that went too far. He's the only detective we've seen so far. We literally skipped far enough to see a red detective, so I guess there are other detectives, so... This one very much depends on how good detectives are. But if detectives work with cases, and cases work with detectives, this isn't... This one's a bit worse, I think, than the last 2 we've seen, because it doesn't do anything when it enters the battlefield. Because it's when a detective enters the battlefield under your control, and whenever a detective you control is turned face up. So this by itself does nothing. You play this, and it just sits there. But, if you're playing a detective deck, it does buff all your creatures. But then how many detectives make tokens? And are they all making clue tokens? Clue tokens are kind of a slow draw. They're good, because, you know, you can just draw cards whenever you need it, but they're a bit slow on the draw. I don't know, because limited goes long, so you can tend to be slower. I think this is worse than the last case we just saw. This one, the Gateway Express. Hey, Fatal. How you doing, buddy? Yeah, I think this case is worse than the last case we looked at. And I still don't know whether cases are good. This seems probably like the worst one. At least the first one we could see a use for, right? Yeah, I'm good. I'm really excited to be looking through the new cards. This always makes me happy. I love doing new card reviews. I literally haven't looked at any of these cards yet, so I was like almost bouncing out of my seat last night because I was excited to check them all out. But yeah, I don't think Case of the Pilfered Proof is great. No, probably not. What have we got? Case of the Uneaten Feast. Okay, 1 mana. This is rare. 1 mana. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. That's a good effect. Solve. You've gained 5 or more life this turn. So you have to play 5 creatures by itself. So we haven't seen that much well, okay, so I say we haven't seen that much healing. We did see the life link. Oh no, actually we have. The Lamia had, or the whatever thing it was called, had when it dies you gain 3 life. And the Angel had life link. So actually, there are a couple of ways to gain life at least. So if you solve it, sacrifice this case. Creature cards in your graveyard gain. You may cast this card from your graveyard until end of turn. Which one? This case or the last case we were looking at failed? This one or this one? The Pilfered Proof. Or do you mean the Uneaten Feast because you can flicker creatures to heal yourself for a bunch? Yeah, I can see that. But then, Case of Uneaten... So... So how does this work, though? Wait. So, when you solve this, if it says, if unsolved, solve at the beginning of your end step, right? So if you solve at the beginning of your end step, and when you solve this, you sacrifice the case, creature cards in your graveyard gain, you may cast this card from your graveyard until end of turn, how does that work? Because you already... It's... So the solve effect is at the end of turn. So it's already the end of your turn. So does it carry over until your next turn? Or do you not get to cast anything because it's just at the end of turn? You get to flash stuff. I don't know how good that is. Again, I'm looking at these from a limited standpoint. I'm trying to look at these from a limited standpoint. I don't know if this is good. To solve, you've gained 5 or more life this turn. So, the first turn you play it, does it solve as soon as you gain that much life? Or is it always at the end of turn? Yeah, maybe you're right. I just can't see this being that good in limited, I don't think. I think you'd have to... Like, I'd want to play this on turn 1, so you get the gain life effect for the maximum value. But then when you solve this, it solves at the beginning of your end step, and then all your creature cards can be played from your graveyard until the end of that turn. Which just means you have the rest of your end step, which means you can't play anything apart from flash stuff, which seems weird. I don't know. I don't think this card is particularly good, especially in limited. Maybe in Commander it's good, but I don't think in limited it's good. Defenestrated Phantom. Okay. 6 mana for a flying 4/3. Oh, but you can turn it up. So you can play it for 3 as a face down 2/2 with Ward 2, and then for 5 mana you can flip it face up. I think this is okay. I think this is okay in limited, because I think what you do is you play it as a 3/3, as a 3 mana 2/2 with Ward 2, and then when you've got 5 mana at the end of your opponent's turn, you just flip it face up into a 4/3 flyer, and then the following turn you have a 4/3 flyer to hit them in the face with. Like, I was going to say, this is just a more expensive version of the flyer we saw. But technically, it's still a 5 mana 4/3 flyer, just with extra steps. So, I think this is very okay. I mean, this is common, so you could run a couple of... You've probably got a couple of these. The other one was uncommon, so you might only have 1 or 2. Maybe not even that many. But, I mean, it's a 5 mana 4/3 flyer, just with a bit of extra faff. So... Still a bit of a plain card. I don't know. It's probably fine. You probably have like 1, maybe 2 of these. Maybe. Probably 1. That's probably the top end. Delny Streetwise Lookout. Okay. 3 mana for a 2/2. Creatures you control with power 2 or less can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. Okay. Let the little guys through. If an ability of a creature you control with power 2 or less triggers, this ability triggers an additional type. Okay. So this is... Your entire deck has power 2 or less and just goes crazy and just swings below everything? This card's good, right? Has to be. Like... It allows all of your small guys to go underneath their big guys, and depending on if there are some good battle cry triggers, or just creatures that are power 2 or less that have good triggers on them. Like, have we seen any yet? This guy would trigger twice, which I don't really care about. And that's it. That's all we've seen so far. So currently, there's not a massive amount of really exciting triggers going on. But there could be. Also, does this allow White Weenie to have a brand new deck that's just, you know, all 2 or less cost creatures and just a bunch of... Yeah, I think this goes into the current standard white-blue soldier deck again, doesn't it? White aggro might be really busted with a couple of these new additions. Oof. But yeah, I think in limited this card is also good because I think if you pick this early, I mean you're gonna have some power toolers creatures with triggering effects. If you don't, you're probably not playing anything in the early turns and you're probably getting murdered. So I guess this guy's probably pretty good. The problem is I feel like you'd have to build your deck around 2 power or less creatures, which I don't. Again, I have no idea how many there are. So maybe it's a thing you can do. I would be tempted to with this guy existing in the set, but I'll have to see what we're looking to, what sort of triggers we get off that. Doorkeeper Thrall. 2 mana for a 1/2 flash flying artifact, and creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. Okay, this is a standard tech card. This isn't that good. I don't think it's a 2 mana 1/2 flash flyer. It's fine. Artifacts and creatures enter the battlefield or don't cause abilities to trigger is essentially this is a card that people run in their sideboard specifically to stop certain things from triggering. So in limited, you're not going to be. I mean, maybe you keep it in your sideboard, and if somebody has Delny and is using a bunch of battle cry triggers, then you just put this into your deck, and then your opponent is sad. But as a card by itself, it's a 1/2 flying flash for 2. It's very mediocre at best. Due Diligence. 3 mana for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield... When it enters the battlefield, target creature you control other than enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and gains vigilance until end of turn. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has vigilance until end of turn. So it's like a enchantment with a pump spell attached for something else. I mean, I'm not excited about picking this card. Like, I'm not foaming at the mouth with excitement at the idea of giving something +2 or two things +2/+2 in vigilance. One of them until end of turn and one of them permanently. But it's not bad. It probably allows you to swing with both creatures, assuming, you know, you actually have some chance on the board. Which probably screws up your opponent's blocking for a turn, because you're attacking with 2 creatures that are both pumped and have vigilance, and so you can still block on the defense. I think this card's pretty good. I don't think it's great. I think it's fine. Again, I'm not excited about picking this card up, but I'm not sad about it either. I think this is like a 22, 23 card. Probably have like one of these, maybe. It's fine. It's better than a lot of enchantments, because it, like, if you play this enchantment, they can't just blow up the creature you're putting it on and be like, haha, nothing happens. Actually, no, they can, because it has to enter the battlefield, doesn't it? No, this is still not as good. Still not very good. Has the same weakness all enchantments do, where if you blow up the targeted creature, it does nothing. Which is always the sad part of enchantments. Essence of Antiquity. 5 mana for a 1/10. Or Disguise for 3. This might be really gross, right? This is so fucking... This has got a fat ass on it. This is so defensive. When Essence of Antiquity is turned face up, creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Untap them. This is good. Like, you just disguise this, and then if your opponent's ever... This is like a removal spell counter, or a way to swing out at your opponent, and then when they swing back, untap everything. And it's got a fat ass on it, so it can block just about anything on the fucking planet. I think this is good. I'd be happy with one of these in my deck. I'd honestly be excited to pick this card. Like, 5 mana for a 1/10 isn't very good, but you're not playing this as a 5 mana 1/10. You're playing it as a 3 mana 2/2 with ward, and then leaving up 3 mana to flip it into a 1/10. Everything I control gains hexproof and untaps. This is really good. It has to be. It has to be really good in limited, right? Because, like, with this thing, you don't care about the crackback. You just start smacking your opponent, and when he goes, haha, I have you on the return swing, you just flip, all my creatures untap, block, you're dead. And so your opponent always has to think, is that face down 2/2 an Essence of Antiquity if you're playing white? Because if it is, this removal spell doesn't work, or swinging out doesn't work, because you can just untap everything. This card's good. This card has to be good. Yeah, it has to be good. Forum Familiar. 1 mana for a 1/1, and you can disguise it for 2. So, wait. You have to play it for 3, and then pay 2 more. So this is like a 5 mana. When Forum Familiar is turned face up, return another target permanent you control to its owner's hand, and put a +1/+1 counter on Forum Familiar. I think, so, as a 1 mana 1/1, do I want to play this for 3? This is the question. Do I want to play this for 3, leave it face down, and then when my opponent targets one of my things, I can bounce it and make this into a 2/2? Is that good? Maybe. It's a bit slow. It's very slow, actually. I don't know. I think there are some cases where this is a brilliant little card, and there are some cases where it's a 1 mana 1/1. Or a 5 mana 2/2 that doesn't do anything. Like, that's the thing. That's 5 mana. Because you have to play 3 for the face down 2/2 ward with 2. And then pay another 2 to flip it. And then return another permanent to your hand. But you're doing, I'm assuming you're returning something you want to, or else why would you even flip this? To get a 2/2. It's very expensive and slow. I think this is very slow and expensive. I don't know if this is great. Yeah, I'm not a big fan. Griffnaught Tracker. 4 mana for a 3/2 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. It's fine. It's 4 mana 3/2 flyer. In the previous set, we had a 4 mana 3/2 flyer that came with a 1/1 that was much better than this. But it's a 4 mana 3/2 flyer, whatever. You'll probably play it. There'll be people playing like white-blue flyers that'll just run this. Like, it's fine. Maybe the targeting the graveyard is important. I haven't seen any of the colours, so I don't know if anyone interacts with the graveyard too much. It's fine. Hazda Vigilante. 5 mana for a 4/4. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control with power 2 or less. This is pretty good, actually. Because when it enters the battlefield. So it's 5 mana for a 4/4 and put a +1/+1 counter on a creature I control with power 2 or less. I think for 5 mana, that's good. I think the only problem with this thing is if you have a number of them, or if you're bouncing this thing, and you pump all of your creatures outside of its range. But then that's not a bad thing. Like, if you've turned a field with 5 1/1s into 5 3/3s just by this existing, like, that's good. That's very good. So, I think this is good in limited. Again, this is all in limited, so this is good in limited. Inside Source, 3 mana for a 1/1. When Inside Source enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. Okay, so detective's white and blue, because we were seeing a lot of detective talk earlier. Okay. Target detective you control gets +2/+0 and gains vigilance until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Okay, so this is 3 mana for 3/3 in power across 2 bodies. And you can spend 3 to pump your 2/2 to a 4/2 and give it vigilance. Only as a sorcery, so your opponent sees it coming. But I mean, it's getting vigilance, so your opponent probably sees it coming anyway. I mean, if they've got token stuff, we saw that thing before that liked tokens and made tokens come with clue tokens. This is okay as a it's like a token generator with upside. That's fine, I guess. It's a bit mediocre. Like, I'm not jumping for joy at picking this card up, but it's okay. Depending on how much detective interaction you've got, this is fine. Karlov Watchdog. 4 mana for a 3/2 with vigilance. Permanents your opponent's control can't be turned face up during your turn. That could be important. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. This is a good little card. Bit expensive. I think this is a bit pricey, which I'm not a big fan of. But it's a 3/2 with vigilance that prevents your opponents from doing trickery in your turn. And if you swing out on your turn, it makes everything get buff. So it's not just like everything gets big when you swing out. It's also preventing your opponent from doing something. And I'm assuming there'll be some sort of disguise deck or some sort of disguise colors or whatever. Something that likes doing disguise stuff. And this counters it. So if you have one of these, I keep it on hand because you can always sideboard it in during a sealed or draft and screw over your opponent's disguise stuff. Crovid Haunch. 1 mana for food equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. And you can sacrifice it to gain 3 life like you can with all food. When it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you do, create 2 1/1 white dog creature tokens. So so you play this for 1, and it does nothing, or you can equip it to a creature, and then for 4, you can sack it, gain 3, make 2 1/1s. Is that okay? Is that good? I mean, maybe it's good in limited. I mean, there are certain, like, cheap artifacts can be good in limited, because you can just put them onto small creatures and just make them big enough that it's something that your opponent has to deal with. And artifact removal, if your opponent has the mana up, just makes 2 1/1s, so that's going to be annoying. And if at any moment you need blockers, you can sacrifice this at any time. Right? So if your opponent, summons a 20/20 on their turn with haste and swings at you, you could just set this for 2, tap 2, make a 1/1, or make 2 1/1s, one of them blocks. So, yeah. This card's fine, I think, in limited. I think it's actually pretty good. It's probably better than I'm giving it credit for, but I'm never a big fan of equipment, so it's okay. Make your move. Ooh, chess. 4 mana, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with power 4 or greater. Sure. This is, what is it? Smite Evil. Which is 2 mana, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. And then also has disenchant and destroy. Is disenchant artifact or enchantment? I think it is. like disenchant staple to it, it's fine. Like, in white, you probably run a couple of copies of this just in case there's a big thing that you need to get rid of. I mean, like, standard mono white decks probably run the destroy target creature with power 4 or greater for things like Shield Rod and stuff. This deals with Shield Rod and other things if needed, although it does cost 1 more. But, in limited, I'd say it's fine. You maybe won one of these. I don't know. It's not the most exciting white removal, but we've only seen this and the case removal, which requires you to have a bunch of creatures, so. Makeshift Binding. 3 mana. When it enters the battlefield, exile 2 creature your opponent controls until it... yeah, okay, so this is your 2/3 mana, 4 mana enchantment. Exile something until this goes away. Gain 2, yeah. There's one of these in every set. Ossification is one of these. There's Oblivion Ring, blah 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 blah. Or there's 100 different things of these, but okay, this one gains you 2 life. Sure. Market Watch Phantom, 2 mana. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, it gains flying until end of turn. Okay, not bad. Again, if you're running the power 2 or less theme, it's just a 2 mana 2/2 flyer, probably most turns. Start pinging in the air. I will say this is a good card. In limited, this is a good card because it's removal. Sorry, I skipped over that because I said this has been printed 100 times, but I'm pretty sure I've said this before and I'll say it again. This is removal, it's good. Yeah, this card is fine if you're playing the whole power 2 or less mechanic, which I don't know how much that's going to be a thing. Museum Nightwatch. 4 mana. When it dies, create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token, and you can disguise it. For 5 total. I mean, I don't think you're doing it for disguise. Maybe you are. Maybe you're playing on... if you've got nothing else to do on turn 3, you just play this face down, why not? But, I mean, this is fine. It's a 4 mana 3/2, so a bit overpriced, but when it dies, it leaves a 2/2 behind. That's pretty good. Because then it's just... you can just swing with this thing willy-nilly, and if it trades, sweet, I get a 2/2. It's fine. Like, I'd probably pick a couple of these up. I'm not upset about picking these up. These are probably okay. Neighborhood Guardian. 2 mana for a 2/2. Okay. Whenever another creature with power 2 less than battlefield under your control, target creature you control gets +1/+1 till end of turn. I mean, this is probably like a core part of the 2/2 mechanic, right? Power 2 or less mechanic. You just have this guy out and you play a bunch of 2 power stuff, and then it all pumps everything and go big for a turn, and then next turn everything's still got power 2 or less, so you can still do a whole bunch of stuff. I think this is fine. But this is, yeah, I think this is better than, I think this is good. I think this is like one of the core pieces for that deck, probably. Because it's an uncommon. Like, obviously, the 3 mana dude that makes everything with power 2 or less go completely crazy and trigger 100 times and blah, 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 blah. That's a core piece in standard. This is for limited. This is the one you can expect to have. This is the core piece you can expect to have in limited. So this is the good piece in limited. No Witness. 4 mana. Each player who controls the most creatures investigates, then destroy all creatures. Oh, good. They've got a 4 mana Wrath in white. Sweet. I mean, it's a Wrath spell. It's good. Even if you're playing the all my creatures are cheap as fuck 2/2s or whatever, you just get to a point where you just stop playing stuff, and then when your opponent overcommits to the board, you just nuke everything from orbit, and then you just vomit your hand out again, and he has to recover on the board, and you're fine because you haven't been playing. Having sweepers is so beneficial for the player holding the sweeper, because they can play like they have a sweeper. They don't have to... if they're already winning on the board, they don't have to commit more to the board. And if you have committed more than them to the board, so that you're winning on the board, they just sweep it. They don't care. So, yes, a 4-mana sweeper in white, this is scary. Hopefully your opponents don't get this, but if they do, I mean, it's limited. You're playing to the board, so if your opponent has this, you're just going to be sad, depressed, and probably lose. Not on my watch. 2-mana, exile target attacking creature. Sure. I mean, this is better than the previous ones. We've had, like, destroy target attacking creature. We've had deal damage to target attacking creature. This just straight up exiles it. This is probably the best one we've seen. For 2 mana, just exile permanently, just go away, is pretty good. I'll actually say, for 2 mana, I'd probably pick a couple of these up. Like, usually I don't take this stuff because I'm like, oh, what if the creature's not attacking? This is exile an attacking creature, and your opponent's probably going to be attacking, so yeah. Novice Inspector. 1 mana for a 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, investigate. And it's a detective, so, you know, detective shenanigans. This is good. A 1 mana 1/2 that does something when it enters the battlefield. This is a good card. Because then on turn 2, even if you can't play anything, you can just draw a card. It's fine. Yeah, this is a good card. On the job, 4 mana, creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn, investigate. So if you're playing like white dudes, like the 2 power dudes, you're running one of these as a finisher. Almost definitely. Because you swing with everything, nothing can be blocked, or maybe you don't have that guy again. He's Mythic Rare, so probably not. But you swing with everything, and your opponent does their blocks, and then everything gets big, and you get to investigate, so you could draw a card to replace this at a later date. This is fine. Not necessarily the best. Like, you're probably, like, if you're running weenies, you're running, like, 1 copy of this limited. Perimeter Enforcer. 2 mana for a 1/1 flying lifelinker. When another detective enters the battlefield under your control, and whenever a detective you control is turned face up, Primitive Enforcer gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This is a good little card. 2 mana for a flying lifelinker, which is going to be a pain in the ass to deal with, and is going to heal you. And then you can grow it if you're playing detectives, which we've seen a couple of now, like this guy and this guy. So we've seen a couple of detectives, so you've certainly got a few. And he's less than 2 power, so you can do all the less than 2 power bullshit with him. This is pretty good, actually. Yeah, I'd play this card. I think this card's really good. Like, we had the Ruined Lurker bat in the last set that was to be fair, it was 1 mana, but a 1 mana 1/1 flying lifelinker that had the scry effect whenever you descended or whatever, and it was a really good card. I think this guy's a good card, more aggressive because he gets pumped and hits your opponent harder. But yeah, I think this card's good. Sanctuary Wall. Oh my god, how long has it been since we've seen a wall? 2 mana for a 0/4 defender that can tap target creature. You may put a stun counter on it. Okay, so you can tap something for a number of turns, but your wall also gets tapped for a number of turns. It's 3 mana for that, though. That's pricey. I mean, maybe this is good. Especially if you're being aggressive. Like, if you're the aggressor and you're just tapping 3 to tap a creature so it can't block for 2 turns, and you don't care about this blocking because you're the aggressor, this could be good. Yeah, this could be good. I don't know. It depends. I think this is better if you're the aggressor because you can tap down their blocker for multiple turns. Because, like, on their turn, before you swing, you tap their blocker. You swing with everything, then it goes round to your turn, your Sanctuary Wall loses its stun counter. Goes round to their turn, their creature loses its stun counter. Goes round to your turn, your Sanctuary Wall untaps, and you've still got you've got another swing. What I mean is better if you're tapping. So yeah, so you tap your opponent, and then you tap something on your opponent's turn, And then after your Sanctuary Wall untaps for the second time, you can tap something on their turn again, and you've got 2 blockers down. I don't know. I like these tap down creatures, but I don't often pick them very much, so we'll have to see. Also, this doesn't attack by itself, so... Seasoned Consultant. It's 2 mana, 1/3, and whenever you attack with a certain number of dudes, it's a 3/3. It's okay. I mean, yeah, it's fine. It triggers all your power 2 or less things, so you probably pick it up if you're doing that deck. It's okay. 10th District Hero. 2 mana for a 2/3. And then for 2 more, collect evidence 2. 10th District Hero becomes a human detective with base power and toughness 4/4 and gains vigilance. The hell? 1 second. What's collect evidence mean? Collecting evidence involves a player exiling any number of cards from their graveyard with combined mana value equal to or greater than the evidence number. Right. Okay. So 2 mana and exile cards equaling... Is it CMC? Mana value. Yeah, CMC 2 or more. And then this goes from being a 2/3 into a 4/4 with vigilance. And then for 3, you have to exile a further 4 CMC from your graveyard. If he has already done the first part, he becomes a legendary creature named Milva the Stalwart, base power 5/5, and gains other creatures you control have indestructible. Okay, so this guy's a win condition by himself. So that's probably really good in limited. He's a 2 mana win condition. Because if he's a 2 mana 2/3, if you don't kill him, he's a 4/4 with vigilance. And if you still don't kill him, he's a 5/5 still with vigilance, and all of your creatures are indestructible. All other creatures apart from him are indestructible, which means you just start going ham as fuck on your opponent because you don't care. Your creatures can't die. Yeah, this guy's really good. It has to be. It has to be really fucking good. Even with the collecting evidence stuff, exiling stuff from your own graveyard, this guy is gross. This could be, if you've been churning out a bunch of stuff and got a bunch of crap in your graveyard, this could be a turn 3 or 4, maybe not, turn 4 or 5. A turn 4 or 5, 5/5 5/5 vigilance, giving everything else you control indestructible. This is really good. It has to be. Yeah. If you see this, I think you pick this in your limited pool. I think you just grab this. I think it's just that good. Unyielding Gatekeeper. 2 mana for a 3/2, or you could disguise, so pay 3 and then turn it up for 5 later. When it's turned face up, exile another target non-land permanent. If you controlled it, return it to the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, its controller creates a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. Okay. So this is like Flicker if you want to trigger your own enter the battlefield effect. Or just straight removal that leaves behind a 2/2 stapled to a creature. This has to be good. Again, it's removal stapled to a creature. And not even like removal until the creature's gone, which is what white usually does. This is just, go away, I'm done with your bullshit. You're a 2/2 now. Like, your opponent's playing green, play some giant-ass monster, huge, joked out of its mind, green 15/15 buff thing, and you just go, nah, it's 2/2. At instant speed, so you can do it on their turn. That's really good. This card is really good. If you again, this is another one. If you see it in limited, grab this card. This card is very good. Wojek Investigator. 3 mana. Man, we've had so many rares at the end of this. So 3 mana, Flying Vigilance 2/4. Already liking this. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate once for each opponent who has more cards in their hand than you. This is good. This, if you've expelled your hand at Mach speed because you're playing weenies, this gives you a way. This gives you a way to reload, and is also a Flying Vigilance 2/4 that is just going to be pecking your opponent in the face most likely. Yeah, I think this is a good card. I think this is a very. This is another. We've had 3 cards in a row that you just pick or take if you're playing white. These cards are all really good. I think. This card is very good. I like this. Wrench, 1 mana for equipped creature. So it costs 2 to equip. The equipped creature gets +1/+1, has vigilance, and can tap a thing for 3, and you can sacrifice its draw card. Again, I'm not a big fan of artifacts. I never use them. But this one could be good. I mean, it's got draw a card status stuck in it, so you can essentially just... Yeah, it's a clue. It is at worst a clue. At best, it's, you know, 10 extra damage your opponent has to take because of the +1/+1 and vigilance. And then it's also a clue. So, it's probably one of the better equipments because you can draw cards.